2024 AMG GT Coupe. What I have on my screen here is the older version, the first generation AMG GT, and Mercedes has made a lot of changes and a pretty significant one to really step up the competition with its main rival, the Porsche 911. So in this video, we're going to be talking about everything about this brand new redesigned 2024 AMG. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe. Let's get to it. All right, so now this vehicle on my screen, as you see now, is the 2020, or the first series of the Mercedes-Benz AMG GT, which Mercedes introduced, I believe, in 2016 to battle the 911 Porsche, which Mercedes wanted to do as two-seat sport car to kind of rival Porsche and take away some of their market share. It's a pretty successful car, but there was one thing that the 911 did have that the Mercedes-AMG didn't, which was 2 extra seats. The reason for that is you have more space back there, and it's a bit more practical. And that's the thing with the 911, it's more of a practical car. So what Mercedes has done is done exactly that. They've made it a more practical car by adding rear seats. So what we're going to do is in this video, we're going to kind of look at the previous version of the car. We're going to kind of do a comparison, and I can hopefully get hold of one so we can do a full review on it. So, but for this video's sake, let's get to it now. So now looking at this is the previous version, right? So this is, I'm gonna give car and driver some clout here, but this is the 2022 AMG GT. So as you can see, this is kind of the front of it. This is what it looks like from the front. We're gonna kind of go through some of these pictures here. That's the rear, and you're gonna see the redesign by Mercedes and what they've done. This is the interior. We're gonna do step-by-step comparison as well. There's the rear. So this is the older car, right? As we see, very nice silhouette, but it's not just a redesign. It's basically a complete redesign of this car. So this is some of the shots from the rear, the taillights, the interior. I will say that this interior, although Mercedes already did some upgrades, they kind of did a refresh in this generation. So they have the more, digital display in front of the driver. They also have a little tablet display. This was kind of getting outdated, and as Mercedes has changed the design language of their interior with more screens, kind of how they start out with the C-Class, now the S-Class and the E-Class, they have done the exact same thing to the Mercedes. So without further ado, now let's look at the 2024 Mercedes-AMG GT Coupe. Now here it is. Now you see the front, and it is completely different than the previous version. So you look at this, you still have that same grille, but the lights have changed. The whole design of the car is completely changed by Mercedes. So what we look here is now the car has up to 577 horsepower. Now what Car and Driver is claiming is that Mercedes reinvents its sexy performance coupe with greater focus on luxury and practicality. And that's what I mentioned earlier, the practicality aspect of it. So now looking at this, let's look at the pictures now of the car, and let's look at what has changed compared to the prior vehicle. And again, it's a pretty significant change by Mercedes. So you also see here the taillight is almost like a 3D element, and you have this whole line running through the entire back of the car. So it almost looks like a 3D version. So this is the front of the car. And again, this grille still exists, but you see the light now, but suppose it was more of a horizontal. Now they kind of brought the headlight back, and you see different inlets is here as well. See, so the front, now comparing it to the previous version, you just go back a few clicks here. This is a nice picture of the angle. So the point of this is to really just show the changes and what's upcoming in the technology of the new car. All right, so that's the front. So we'll see how it's changed. So Mercedes has made it more of a rounder design. The lights, it doesn't look as wide as before, but before, one thing I really liked about the car that stood out was how low and wide it was. As you see in this picture here, it seems to be more rounded off. Reminds me more of the SL Mercedes that they have. That's the picture from the side. So it does remind you a little bit of an 911 with that little window there, and they seem to make this a bit bulgier as well in the back. And then you see the rear of the car, and comparing it to the previous edition. See, the rear is completely different. Again, this car looks slightly taller, not as wide as before. You still have the quad exhaust design. There's something to note as well, as we're looking at the old and the new. I also want to get to the interior, and I think that's where the changes have been. You see the line of the hood, it looks like it was almost near the grille here. You had the Mercedes logo. And now it's not, the Mercedes logo seems to have come up a bit higher, and this line has also been pushed back a bit. That's from the side. And it looks more rounded, it looks more, not as aggressive, I would say. It looks a bit sleeker, perhaps. You see, I did love this line, very long hood, and then you had the sloping rear. So now you still have that sloping rear, but it feels like the back is also bigger as well because, again, Mercedes has introduced rear seats. So therefore, they had to make this back end longer. So what do you guys think as far as the design? Do you like the new change? I mean, I think it's a nice updated look. I did like the previous version. There's the AMG engine, which we're going to talk about as well. Then you have the upgraded headlights that looked very, very nice. It continues to be a V8 bi-turbo, which is a great thing because for the C-Class, we do know that Mercedes changed from the V8 to a four-cylinder hybrid engine. I do love these wheels, by the way, though. Now, these are new design wheels by Mercedes-AMG, and I do love how they look. Carbon fiber, as you had in the previous model. I do like this new protruding door handle, Mercedes-Benz. They borrow that from the S-Class. Now let's look at the interior of the old model. Again, going through the pictures here. It's good to go through these pictures because we can compare to the older version. So here, we have the little screen here. I mean, we say little screen because make this redesign, again, to update the car, but also to follow the design language of the S-Class, the C-Class, the E-Class, the SL. Now looking at the 2020 AMG GT Coupe, we'll see the previous design. So, I mean, it still looked, rather nice, rather sporty, but what Mercedes has done is really take it up a notch to make it in line with its top cars. And keep in mind that this car is based on the SL Mercedes. So that's why you're going to see a lot of similarities, and I think Mercedes has done an amazing job with the interior. Looking at the interior now, look at what has changed. I mean, look at the steering wheel, for example. Right? We'll look at the steering wheel here, and we'll see, look at the difference in steering wheel compared to the previous version of the car. I mean, you had the stock there that you still have. Again, this is the older design, but this new is just absolutely stunning. See with the carbon fiber. Again, these little inlets. And again, based on the SL. So, I mean, Mercedes has done an amazing job with this upgrade. Now, this is another look from the side as well. From my understanding, this screen also moves, so we can go forward or backwards. So you'll see, comparing it to the previous version, again, the steering wheel that I mentioned, you see how it looks very different compared to before. There's the interior there. Now, the big talking point is the rear seats, which now you have and you did not have before. So I think this may attract more people to the AMG GT. Not that it took people away from it previously, But having a back seat does make it more practical again for golf clubs. And again, it takes that step closer to being really a one-for-one comparison with the Porsche 911. See AMG, and you have the bigger trunk here with the seats down, as I mentioned, the rear seats, and then the seat up, which again, you did not have that in the previous Mercedes-AMG. So I wanted to show you as well the previous version. As I mentioned, they have added in the 2 seats in the back, but this is how the car was previously. So you see, you had the smaller trunk, and then you had this kind of going up. So really, there was no way to push that down. If we look at the new version, again, this is the older version. You had a space here, and then you could maybe put some things up here. But you look at the new version, and you see that the floor is basically flat. And then if you put the seat up, you still have very decent size comparing to how it looked previously. All right, so now looking at the engine. So what has not changed is the fact that the car still is, this is the new engine, this is the old engine. Obviously not much to tell apart here, but the good thing about this is it remains a 4-liter bi-turbo V8, meaning there is no electrification. So there you don't have the issue of running into what happened with the C-Class. It went from an 8-cylinder to a 4-cylinder. So for now, Mercedes has remained true to what this car was all about, that big V8 power which preceded the SLS previously. Now you can get 2 versions of this car. You can get the AMG GT55 and also the AMG GT63. Now the 55 has 476 horsepower, and while the full flat has 585 horsepower. So if you get the AMG 63, that has 585 horsepower, which is a huge power increase from the previous car, which had 462 horsepower. Now the GT55 will do 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds, while the more powerful car will do it in 3.6 seconds. Now both cars get the 9-speed automatic gearbox, and the new AMG GT is the V8, and this is the brand new 2024 Mercedes-AMG GT Coupe. It should be released later this year, and the starting price of the previous Mercedes-AMG GT was $115,000. It looks like the price is going to be around $125,000, so it's $10,000 increase. Now, do want to make some updates on the figures, because depending on where you go, you get different figures. But from what I see, is that it is going to be the top tier. The AMG GT63 is going to be a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 with horsepower of 577 and 590 foot-pound of torque, and it looks to do 0 to 60 in about 3.1 and 3.3 seconds. So again, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Have an awesome day.